Welcome, everybody. This is the second go-to session of 4 we're going to hold this month. We have a lot to cover tonight, so let's just get straight into it. As you can see by the title of this presentation, we're going to talk about this week's main activity, which is the actual essay that is based on your PSA topic. But we'll also spend a lot of time talking about research and APA format. Probably this English class is the first time you're going to encounter APA in depth. Typically, DGL doesn't get too deeply into it. I don't know about psychology, but this is usually students' first real introduction to APA, and because it can seem a little bit overwhelming, I'll spend some time talking about it. As a matter of fact, if you want to prepare yourself, there will be a part of this presentation where I'll walk you through the steps of how to set up your paper in terms of layout. So if you want to play along, you might open up a blank Microsoft Word document because we'll use it later, and you can just follow along with me as I go through the steps. But before we do that, let's talk about some of the more basic stuff. Here's the agenda for today. I'll actually get back to the Appeal for Action essay assignment sheet, but I'll first actually talk about research, then we'll talk about APA. I'll give some pretty general tips about what you might do in your essay that's due for Sunday, and then as always, we'll leave things open at the end for questions and answers. Before we get too deep into this, just some reminders. Before you even begin thinking about the essay, which is due this Sunday, so again, this class moves fast, so I'm already reading through your introduction paragraphs that you wrote for the discussion board. But the next main task is, to write a short paper. But before you do so, be sure to check the feedback that I provided in response to your week 1 go-to quiz. They were completed yesterday, so everybody should have received feedback now. Second, if you have not already, refine your topic or improve it. So some of you had topics that were pretty good and on the right path, but maybe I had some suggestions in the ways it could be more precise. For a few of you, not too many, but for a few, the topics might have been a little bit further off. So there's probably a lot of refining to do in terms of those topics. But it's crucial that now, by tonight, people should have a solid topic that they can work on for their paper. Because as I said in week 1, this topic will become the foundation for everything you do this month. The essay is due this Sunday, and your final project, which will be a multimedia public service announcement. Okay? Let's talk a bit about research. There is a research component for the essay. There's actually just a minimum of 1 source required. That source has to come from the Full Sail Library databases, and we'll take a look at the databases in just a moment. But the minimum is 1. I actually encourage that for most of your topics. A lot of you have rich topics, whether it's the issue of royalty rates paid out by streaming music companies, or video game companies releasing broken, unfinished games. A lot of these issues are actually fairly complicated in an order. If you remember those fancy Greek words from last week, ethos, pathos, logos. Remember, ethos is the appeal to authority. It's the overall credibility and trust that you develop as a writer. One way to develop ethos is to know your topic really well, to know it so well that you actually become sort of a mini expert on your topic. And then with that mini expertise, you're able to write with authority. But for a lot of you, it's difficult to get that authority unless you do some research first. Because without research, there's the danger that your paper might read like, the world according to John Doe, or the world according to Jane Smith. Some people can get away with that. I'm sure Steven Spielberg could write a terrific essay on filmmaking without having to do research. I'm sure that Stephen Hawking could write a pretty terrific essay about physics without having to do research. But most of us can't do that, okay? Most of us need help. Most of us have to become educated about what we're writing about. And that's where research comes into play. So if you look at this slide here, and this may be involved in a quiz question, okay? I like to think of research as being compared to Research is like joining a discussion or joining a conversation. And by that, I mean, imagine that you're attending a party, okay? Not a cake party, not like a wild, crazy party. I'm talking about like, a party where adults attend. Um, a dinner party, for example. A party where maybe there are pockets of people, people in groups having, somewhat serious conversations. It could be about politics. It could be about art. It could be about the economy. It could be about just about anything. Chances are you're probably not just going to jump into the conversation. You're going to hang back for a while, listen, and then when you're comfortable, when you feel confident that you know what's being discussed and that you have a place in the discussion, then you'll participate. Ideally, this is how research functions. It's just that instead of a literal conversation going on, the conversation I'm talking about is the conversation that's been going on for years about your topic. Okay, if you're writing about, buggy video games that are released before they should be, or the royalty rates paid out by streaming music companies, or copyright issues in graphic design, etc. Like people have already spoken about these topics, and they've been doing so for years. In other words, the conversation about these topics has already started and has been ongoing. It's already existed before you ever entered the room. So research in that sense is like a conversation. You'll eavesdrop on the conversation, right? Just as you can hang out at the edges of a conversation and listen in. Here, the equivalent of that will be reading what other people have written. And then, yes, once you're comfortable, once you found a couple, let's say 2, 3, 4 solid articles on your topic, and then once you feel comfortable, once you feel like you know your place in the conversation, then yes, that's when you'll participate. Okay, so ideally, that's how research functions. Let me take a quick sip from my drink. Now, I realize Full Sail students, a lot of you might have full-time jobs, you might have spouses, partners, children, and school is one of the many things you have to juggle. So I understand you don't necessarily have every second of the day to devote to deep research. That said, I'm going to encourage you to do as much quality research as you can on your topic, just because the more you read about your issue, again, the more authority you'll have when you write about it. The less that you do, the less authoritative you'll probably sound. Okay. So yeah, think of research like joining a discussion or participating in a conversation. Let's talk about APA style. Right? We know what the word style means. This woman, for example, in this picture has some style. That's not quite the style we're talking about. APA style. It's a specific style system that we use that governs everything from the way things look on the page to how we quote material, how we cite facts and statistics. Maybe some of you are more familiar with MLA. MLA is what you typically use in an English class. Here at Full Sail, APA is the standard for all classes. Is there anybody here who's used APA before or is familiar with APA? Or are most of you familiar with MLA? Okay, Aaron says that he has. Melanie's used MLA in the past. And maybe everybody else hasn't used much of either. Okay, well, I'm going to go over some of the basics about APA. Really, APA and MLA, they're very similar in the sense that both are exactly the same in terms of they have rules governing how things should look on the page, in terms of paragraphing, in terms of elements on the page. They're also similar in terms of they both have rules for how to handle the incorporation of research. It's just the particulars of how you do that are different. But the logic behind both systems is really, really similar. So it's like learning a new. It's like learning the same thing, just with a slightly different set of rules. But roughly, APA kind of is divided into three big areas. So issues of layout and format, which we're going to deal with in just a second. So by that I mean things like paragraphing, font, page numbers, the creation of a header, in-text citations. So within your actual paragraphs, anytime you not just quote information, but even cite information like facts or statistics that come from research, it needs to be cited right there and then. Some people believe that, oh, I only need to cite stuff when I'm using a direct quotation. No, even if you cite something that's completely written in your own words, but the information comes from another source, you need to cite it. And finally, an end of the paper references page. In MLA, it's called a works cited page. In other format systems, it's called a bibliography. In APA, it's called the references page. Okay, this is the final page of your paper. That's just a list of your sources with detailed information about those sources. So let's deal with the first one right now, layout and format in real time. So here, if you want to play along, I said at the beginning of the session that you should have a blank Microsoft Word document open, because I'm going to show you how to create a cover page, how to set up the basic overall layout in terms of margins, in terms of spacing, so that if you follow along with these steps, you'll have everything set up already. You'll kind of have your template to work from. If you don't follow along, you can always watch the recorded version of the session and go through the steps. Or I'm going to try not to go through the steps quickly, but if for some reason you fall behind or you miss a step, remember that it'll be recorded. For the few of you, there aren't many, but there are about 6 of you who are in a campus version of my class. We'll be going over this again in class on Thursday. It's that important because sometimes people either slip up or they fall behind, or maybe they get confused by one of the steps I'm going to cover. We'll do it in real time in class. Okay, so oops, let me close this. I'm going to open up a blank Microsoft Word document, which you should as well. So, by the way, I'm using the Mac version of Microsoft Word. So if you're using a different version, some of the things that I might click on might be in different places, but you should be able to find them. If you don't have Microsoft Word, you can use tools like Google Docs or Microsoft OneDrive. I'm going to type that in the chat. Microsoft OneDrive is basically Microsoft's online version of its Office tools. So you just go to OneDrive. I don't remember if it's OneDrive.com or something. If you just Google Microsoft OneDrive, oops, I typed OneDrives, and set up an account, you'll have access to the online version of Word, which is a bit more stripped down. You may not have the full range of tools here to click, but you should be able to find them up in the menu. Same thing if you use Google Docs or Apple's program Pages. Again, you might have to search around for the tools, but if you're using Microsoft Word, you should be able to follow along pretty simply. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is set all margins to 1 inch. So in my version, I'm using, again, Microsoft Word for Apple, we have this little layout tab. So if I click there, here are my margins. I just need to change all of them to 1. Okay, and when I change them to 1, the changes occur in real time. So you might not even notice them, but they're happening as soon as I make them. Okay, so 1, 1, 1, 1. Everything's set up. Now, the second thing we need to do, I'm going to go back to the Home tab. We should pick a standard font size. Times New Roman is pretty much standard, so I'm going to switch to that. Okay. Times New Roman 12 point is standard. You can use another appropriate, very, very common font, but don't use anything outlandish like those cartoon-looking fonts or those big fat-looking fonts. Okay, use something appropriate. Times New Roman is pretty much standard. Second, we're going to create the header. So all I'm going to do is in this top inch of the page, I'm just going to double-click, and the header opens. And what we're going to do here is automatically type the words running head. Okay. So first letter of the first word is capitalized, other words are not. And then in all caps, we're going to put the title of our paper. Okay, I'm just going to say your title goes here. If you have a very long title, let's say it goes beyond half a page, use a shortened form of your title. So let's imagine I had a really long title. It would be fine to reduce it to something like your title. Okay. Second, we need to insert page numbers. It's probably easiest, at least in this version of Word, just to go up to the tool, the menu functions, and click insert and then page numbers. Because if you do so, the page number is set up exactly where you want it, the top right corner. So I'll just click OK. And boom, there's our header. Okay. We've created our header. We can click out of that. Now right now we're working on creating the cover page. So next what we do is we're going to hit enter until we're approximately halfway down the page. Okay, and we can do this just by using our eyesight. And I'm going to show how you can improve it using just your eyes in a second. But there are three things we need to do. We need to center this information. So I'm going to click the Align Center tab. And we need to retype the title of our paper. Okay, obviously you'll come up with something else other than your title goes here. Your name. Oops, your name does not, well, let me double check. Even I sometimes forget the APA rules. So let me cheat and look at an example real quickly. Okay, oh, okay, good. This part isn't in all caps. By the way, even though it seems embarrassing, like I can't remember the rules, that's fine. APA rules are so numerous that even I forget them. Okay, so it's always good to double check. So your title goes here, not in all caps. Then your excuse me, then your name, and then the university you're attending. While we're here, why don't we go ahead and set up double spacing for the entire document? So I'm going to highlight all this. In this version of Microsoft Word, the spacing tab is this little up and down arrow. So I'm going to change it from 1.0 to 2.0. And finally, just again, by eyeballing things, I'm going to try to make sure that this is more or less in the center of the page. Aaron says every time I add a page number, it deletes the header. Aaron, make sure that you're actually in the header like this. And this is why I suggest choosing the pull-down menu, insert page numbers, and then just click OK. If you do so, they shouldn't be disappearing. At least I hope not. Sometimes numbers are weird. There are times where for some reason it disappears, and sometimes it's just a matter of doing it over again. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to make this overall view smaller to see if I'm more or less in the center of the page. And I'd say, yeah, I'm pretty close. I'll bump this down a little bit. Maybe that's too far. I don't know. That looks good. Okay. Again, you're trying to make it look more or less like it's in the center. Okay, good. So next, I'm putting my cursor right after the university. Next, we keep hitting enter until we get to the very first line of a new page. As soon as we get to that new page, we stop. Okay? So boom, I'm on a new page. Stop. You again retype your title, your essay title, and center it. We hit enter once, not 2 times, not 10 times. Okay? Notice too that the title is elegantly and simply just centered, with any main words receiving initial capitalization, meaning the first letter is capitalized, but other letters are not. It's not bolded. It's not underlined. It's not put in italics. It's not put in a 20-point font. Again, I'm not trying to mock, but people love to put their own little touches and embellishments. And the beauty of APA style or MLA style or the other style systems that exist is its consistency. So in APA, we're using one consistent font size and style for the entire document, okay, from top to bottom. from that header at the top of page 1 all the way to the references page on the final page of the document. Okay, so yeah, after the title, you hit enter once. You make sure that you're starting to the left side of the screen again, and that you're indenting the very first line, the very first sentence of a new paragraph. So you have to hit tab to indent, and you can start typing your paper. Okay, so my paper goes here. My paper goes here. I'm going to copy and paste this and keep chugging along because I want to show something real quickly. Okay, so you're working on your paper. You're working on your paper, right? Looks awesome. It seems like this is common sense, but when you reach the end of a paragraph, you stop, you hit enter once. Again, not 10 times. You indent to begin a new paragraph, and you keep on going. Again, and I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not mocking anybody. I know that unless you know the rules, you don't know them, right? But again, lots of students like to be creative. They put too much spaces between paragraphs. They make the title stand out somehow. That's not how APA works. I don't know if it's true or not, but some students have explained that the reason why they like to do things like this and put lots of spaces between paragraphs is because to their eyes, it all looks smashed together. But this is normal format. It looks a little bit odd because the same words, my paper goes here, is being repeated. But if this were filled with just normal sentences, to the eye, having only a single space, or I should say a single double spacing occur between paragraphs, does not look strange. Open up a novel sometime. Okay, open up your Harry Potter book or your Lord of the Rings book. People don't put 10 spaces between paragraphs. Okay, so let's pretend that we're, oops, let me undo that. Let's pretend that we're on, I don't know, page 3, page 4 of the paper, and we finally reach the end. Okay, so let's say we're on page 4. My paper's finished. As soon as you're at the end of the paper, you'll hit return until you get to the very first line of a new page. Okay, and once you get to that new page, you're going to stop. Boom, there I am. Okay, new page. Again, I'm going to center the word references. It's not in all caps. Again, not bolded, not underlined, not italicized, just elegantly the word references. And this is where we're going to create our references page. Now, if you've been following along and you've successfully gone through these steps, you should have a template, right? All you have to do is replace this information, like your title goes here, with your own essay title. You need to replace this gibberish with your own actual words, but you should save this document, okay, so you have the template. Because then you could just hit the ground running and start working on your paper without having to worry about the header and margins and page numbers and paragraphing and spacing, because we've already done it right now. Easy peasy, right? Does it seem a little bit simpler now? Hopefully. Maybe, yes. Okay, so we're going to come back to the references page. I'm going to create some references in real time because now we're getting into the hairy stuff, the stuff that really, really confuses people, like how do you create those references, what needs to be included. But in order to show this in real time, we're going to take a timeout and go to the Full Sail Library databases, okay, which I already have open here. This is the main page for Full Sail Connect. You can browse for the library under Browse Organizations, or it's always listed here on the left as well. So I'm going to click on Library. And if I scroll down, we need to choose Research Databases. You should kind of remember this from DGL. There were a couple projects where you had to use the Full Sail Library databases to access LexisNexis, to access the AP Images database, right? Okay, so we're in. A lot of people choose one of these first options, which is good because I think something like Academic Search Complete is a great place to begin. It's probably the largest and most comprehensive database. There are others, though. There's one that's completely devoted to business matters, one devoted to communication and mass media. If you scroll a little bit down, you'll find, yeah, LexisNexis. LexisNexis tends to result in more searches of things that come from newspapers. Academic Search Complete usually results in more journals, so keep that in mind. It might be a good idea to try both. If you're in, I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing track. If you're in game design or game art, so you're working on a video game related topic, you do have a source here that's strictly related to video games. It's way down the list. It's called Gamasutra. Okay, it's actually an outside website, but because it's listed on the Full Sail Library Databases page, I'll count it as one. So if you click on this, it will take you to this website where you can search for articles that relate to things about video games. But let's try out a search right now. Okay. By the way, if you click on this very first one, all these first items, Academic Search Complete, AB Images, Business Source, Communication Mass Media, they're all individual indexes within the larger umbrella of the EBSCOhost system. But you can always search all of them at once by just clicking EBSCOhost. So I'll try that. And it's asking me to log in. And all I have to do is click this little box here, select all, and it will search all these databases at the same time. Okay. And now we're in. Once you're in, you'll see that you have up to 3 search boxes you can use. I recommend using 2 or 3 of them with unique keywords, because sometimes if you just put in your topic literally, sometimes it will come up with great results. Like if you put in streaming music and royalties, I'll probably get some pretty decent results. Yeah, see, like why music should not be free, Revenge of the Record Labels, an article about Pandora, and you can see that there are nearly 230 results. But some of you might have more nuanced topics, and if you just put in the topic literally, it might not be great in terms of results. So you might have to be creative in the things you want to look for. Anyway, let's go back to, actually, let's just stay here. I was going to say let's use the topic I was using last week about video games. Remember, I modeled an example on the discussion board about irresponsible or over-sexualized images of women in video games, and we can do a search for that. But because I've already typed in streaming music and the royalty rates, I'll just stick with these results. Okay, first of all, on the left here, you should click full text, because there's this kind of annoying thing that happens. Not every result will truly be available. It needs to either have a PDF file or, let's see if I can find one, an HTML file. You will get results that have neither. And then when you click on the actual article, okay, so you click here, you'll find that there's nothing to read. There might be an abstract, which is a fancy word for a summary of the article. But the actual article will not be available to you. So to make sure that doesn't happen, we just click on full text. Okay, and then it will limit the results to only those articles that are truly available. And you can see we've dropped down from 230 results to 174. Second, if you want to limit the range of publication, you can do so. For example, maybe there could be an article from 2000 that's relevant. If I want to add historical context about something like Napster. I don't know how many people here are old enough to remember Napster. I remember it. The good old days where you would quite literally wait an entire hour for like a 3-hour song to download. A 3-minute song to download. No joke. It would take an hour for a single song to download. And now, you can go on Netflix, or you can use any legitimate downloading service, not, pirated stuff. You could download an entire movie in an hour. But yeah, good times. But let's say I want to limit this to very, very recently, okay? I think Spotify has been in existence since, like the late 2000s? I don't know. Let's say I'll use 2010 as my marking point. Actually, it's been a while since I used this feature. Do I have to click search? Or drag the file? Okay, there we go. And you can see I still get a ton of results by reducing it's only things written since 2011, 114 results. So you can see that this is such a hot topic, the amount that streaming music companies pay to artists, that most of the information has been written very, very recently. Okay. But let's say, and by the way, do not just automatically choose the first result. You should be reading these. Remember, research is like joining a conversation. It's not about, oh, I need to go find a quotation to throw in my paper, or, oh, the instructor wants research, so I'm going to go find some, I don't know, some obscure fact and throw it in my paper, and that's my research. I'm not naive. I was a student once, so I'm not trying to I'm not trying to criticize or speak down, but I know all these tricks. Okay, I've done them too. I've tried to take shortcuts when it comes to research. I also knew the old tricks about playing with margins and playing with font size. That's why APA has very, very specific rules. Okay, you can't play those tricks to try to make your paper look longer. So you should be going through these, reading. You don't have to read the entire thing if you can tell after a few sentences that it's not going to work. But I don't know. Let's say that Revenge of the Record Labels I like. Okay, let's say I found this article. It's awesome. I've read it. I know that there's good stuff to use. By the way, don't forget about those skills you learned in GGL. Remember you had to use DIGO? And maybe some of you thought, why am I using this tool? I think this tool is useless. By the way, if you don't like DIGO, there are other bookmarking tools you can use. But this is where bookmarking tools can help out so that anything you read, you can just highlight, right? I don't have DIGO open right now, by the way. You can mark it. And then when it's time to, for example, quote something or cite something, you already have lots of information highlighted that you can use. So anyway, let's say that I love this article, okay? I've already highlighted elements from it. I think it's going to fit perfectly with what I'm going to talk about. Then, yeah, you can use it within your paper, and we're going to talk about citation in just a second, but it's also going to have to appear on your references page. Now, I'm going to show you a trick for if you're using the Full Sail library databases, how you can make creating the reference a breeze. If you look to the right, you have this little function called cite. If you click on it, you get most of the major style systems. So, here's APA. If I scroll down further, I get MLA. So you can use this. But here's the thing. You need to fix all the mistakes that the citation generator makes. So, for example, let me blow this up a little larger. Here's the APA citation. Authors' names are not put in all caps. Article titles are not put in all caps. Because this is a program, all it's doing is taking the author's names, the name of the article, and plugging it into a formula that produces these results. So if the author's name, for some reason, in the article is in all caps, the citation generator is going to use it in all caps, okay? So, but because we're human beings, we need to correct these mistakes. But to begin with, yeah, sure, I'll copy the whole thing over. So let me grab this, copy it, go back to my references page. Here I am, by the way. Cursors, let me make this even a little bit larger. Okay, so my cursor is right after where references. Again, we hit enter once, not 10 times. We go to all the way to the left, and I'm going to paste that reference in there. There's this neat function in Microsoft Word that as soon as you copy something, you can choose from this clipboard, match destination formatting, and boom, it will automatically change it to Times New Roman 12. Now we need to fix all this stuff. Okay, so what's his name? Greenberg, O'Malley, and actually this sounds wrong too. I'm going to show you some other documents where you can learn more about APA because it's important that you know the mistakes so you can fix the errors in the citation generators. Let me go back to the actual. Okay, his name is Zach O'Malley Greenberg. Okay, so I'm getting lost. There's my thing. Okay, so the rule is last name first initial. So his name is Zach Greenberg O'Malley. So really we only need O'Malley ZG. Okay. And Messit. I'm going to try to remember that. Okay. So there, we fixed that. First, last name, first initial, or first initials. And because these are two authors, APA requires you to put the little "and" symbol in between. Okay. And then, yeah, the date immediately follows. This needs to be fixed. Revenge of the Record Labels is not in all caps. As a matter of fact, and here's, let's see if you can remember this rule, because there's a quiz question kind of related to this later. The rule for article titles on the references page in APA is that you're using standard capitalization rules. What does this mean? It means we handle capitalization of the article title just like we would any normal sentence. So it would be Revenge of the Record Labels. Okay. Now, if a proper name appeared in the article title, like I don't know, the name Eminem, or the name of a company like Sony, then yes, you would capitalize those words because you would do so in a regular sentence. So we're capitalizing titles just like normal sentences, and the rest is right. So we have a publication name italicized, and the nice thing about the citation generator is it handles all the volume, serial number issues, and page numbers correctly. There's one final thing we need to do though. Once we've fixed our reference, if it needs fixing, we put the words retrieved from, and I cannot spell the word retrieved. We go back to the database, and to the right, we have this chain link looking symbol called a permalink. That's what I need. So you click on permalink, grab it, copy it, and bring it over. Okay? I hope this isn't too confusing, because this is where students sort of get frustrated. It's like, wow, APA seems difficult. It's not really that difficult, especially if you've been following along. But if you look at normal paragraphs, I said that the first line of a new paragraph is indented, but all other lines in the paragraph are not. For the references page entries, it's the complete opposite. The first line is not indented, but all other lines are. Okay? So I'm going to highlight those extra lines, and I'm going to drag this little guy, the hanging indent, over. Okay? Boom. There's my reference. Taba says, what is this? She's referring to the 195.5. This is the volume and issue number. Okay? Or maybe I have it backwards. Maybe it's issue and volume number. I think it's volume, then issue. And there's a specific way to handle that. And this is the great thing of, yeah, Melanie's right. Like, it is series 195, issue 6, or something like that. Exactly. The good thing about the citation generator is that it gets that stuff right typically. So you don't have to remember, like, oh, the volume, I have to put in italics. And then in parentheses, I need to put the serial number. No, it does all that for you. I'm going to do a couple more references in real time, and I'll be a little bit faster just to show how easy it is. I want to find an example of one that has a DOI number. Let's see if I can find one. Usually it's listed in... It usually tells me here. Okay, I'm going to click on one randomly to see if I can find one. If I can't find it quickly, I'll just quit and move on. Let's see what this citation looks like. Nope. Let me go to page 2. Because this really is useful, because I want to show what happens if there's a DOI number. Anybody know has anybody heard of that before? A DOI number? What that means? Oh, by the way, here's a good example. Okay, it's not a DOI number, but like, here's an example where the citation generator badly screws things up, and unless you can spot it, you're in trouble. Like, here it lists the author as this: Mike Snyder at Mike Snyder, USA Today. USA Today. So the citation generator, which is just a program, it's not a person, it takes all this information and calls it the author's name. So when you click on the cite tool, you get this really ridiculous APA reference, right? Like, all this is the author's name. So be careful of stuff like that. You do need to know the rules of APA so you can fix the errors that are made. I'm going to do a search for something related to my topic, because I think that always results in what I'm looking for, and I swear I'll get moving more quickly. Gender representation, video games. And of course, I'm not getting what I wanted. How about women? I'm looking for a very specific article that I typically use in these sessions. And I'm not finding it. Oh, okay. Even though this article has nothing to do with my topic, but it has a DOI number. So let me show you what I was talking about. Okay. Oh, is my microphone cutting out when I scroll up and down on the screen? I'll try to be aware of that. So if I'm scrolling, yeah, that's what's happening. Okay, even though this article is completely off topic, let's say that it's awesome and I'm going to use it in my essay. Here's what I want to show you. Okay, so I click on the cite tool. You'll notice this APA citation has a DOI number. DOI stands for Digital Object Identifier. I don't care if you ever remember that. What you need to know is that if your source has a DOI number, that's all I need. You don't need to add the words retrieve from. You can just grab the source. So, for example, I'll copy all this over to my references page, and you're good. Okay. So if it has a DOI number, you're good. So let me copy that in. Let me make sure it matches the same font size and style. Actually, and here's a good example. All this would need to be fixed in the title because we're following standard rules of capitalization. Okay. Now, at least one source needs to come from the Full Sail Library databases, but additional sources can come from online. They have to be trusted sources from online, so we're not citing like people's blogs or people's random discussion posts. So, for example, if I Google gender representations of video games, you'll see that there's an actual Wikipedia entry for it. Now, I'm going to stop talking while it loads. You've probably heard that Wikipedia is terrible and evil and bad. Does Wikipedia serve any purpose? Like, can we use it responsibly in some way? Can anybody think of a reason why Wikipedia might be useful? Toby says, so no URL when there's a DOI. Exactly. If you use that citation generator and there's a DOI number, you're set. You got everything you need. That DOI number allows me to just take that number, paste it into my browser, and it will take me right to your article. If not, I need that permalink. Melanie says you can use it to start your research with their external resources links. Yeah, great. And Aaron says the same thing. The references. Good. We would never quote or cite from the actual text of the Wikipedia. Listen, not every Wikipedia entry is terrible. Some actually seem to be pretty well written. If you're an expert in a certain area, you might notice that certain Wikipedia entries are pretty good. But still, even then, we don't cite it because we don't know who's behind it. We don't know where this information is coming about. But yes, if we scroll to the very bottom, okay, I mean, look at this one. We have what? Like over 70 references. Probably there's some good stuff in here, okay? So yeah, it can be a useful tool to lead us to quality articles and sources. But I'm going to go back because I already have an article at the ready to show you how you create a reference for something you find online. I need to go to page 2. Okay, so let's say I love this article. It comes from the BBC, so that's pretty trusted, right? By trusted, I mean it could be something serious like the New York Times or the Washington Post, but it could be USA Today or Slate or the BBC. Okay, it doesn't have to be like super academic. It just has to come from somewhere that we recognize and trust. So let's say I'm going to wait for it to load. Let's say I love this article. Why does sexism persist in the video game industry? Look, we have everything we need. We have a title. We have a date. We have an author's name. And we can just start creating our reference. And now I'm going to move fast and just show how easy it is. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my page. Let's see. Her name was Gittleson. First name K. That article was, I think, 2014. Next, we need the article title. So I'm going to go back to that web page. I'm just going to copy it over because I'm lazy. I don't want to have to type it. It's in a ridiculous font, so I'm going to fix that. I'm going to get rid of this bolding because we don't want that. In italics, we are going to put the name of the publication. In this case, it's BBC, or if you want to put bbc.com, that's fine. And we're set. All we need to do is, again, add the words retrieved from. And here, I before E, except after C. Retrieve from. Here we will just grab the URL. Okay, so I'll go ahead and grab that. Plug it in. And boom, we're done. Easy peasy, okay? I've just created 3 references fairly quickly. Toby says if punctuation is in the title, do we use it in our formatting? I'm not sure what you mean, but yeah, you retain any, like if there were a comma in this title, you would keep it. There's this title is a question, so we keep the question mark if that's what you mean. So yeah, you carry everything over. Okay, so there's a references page. By the way, I hate to see those squiggly lines, so while I'm talking, I'm going to fix all that. But does APA seem a little bit less confusing now? I hope. Toby says yes. Melanie says yes. Okay, good. And if any parts do seem confusing, just rewatch this section of the video, okay? And follow my steps. But I hope you can see, I mean, to my eyes, this entire format, it's very clean. It's consistent. That's what we're looking for in your own documents, okay? And nearly 30 points of your grade goes to APA and research. So, don't lose those points. Okay, let's keep moving because we have a lot no, not a lot, but we still have a few final things to cover. Oh, let me quickly remind you, you have some assets that help you. Where is it? Oh, if you go to the actual essay activity, you have a bunch of stuff available to you. So you have a sample essay to look at. So here's an essay that a student wrote for a previous class, and it's a pretty good essay. It's also a good way to look at a paper that's pretty solid in terms of APA format. But also it gives you a sense of what other students have written and how they've gone about writing it. You also have, and this is what's really useful, this APA Basics PowerPoint, which I'm going to open up real quickly. This has about 50 slides, so I'm not going to go through them right now. But here's the message I want to give. If you spend the 30 to 45 minutes it takes just to sit down with this presentation and somewhat carefully go through the slides, you will finish the presentation with a very strong knowledge of APA. Also, a lot of the exceptions that you might encounter will be answered by this presentation. I don't have enough time in 1 hour to cover every aspect of APA. So for example, what happens if you find an article that doesn't have an author's name, right? It's authorless, or it doesn't have a year of publication. This presentation covers that. It gives some basic information on APA. Let me skip ahead to, right? We're going to get into this in just a second, but how to create in-text citations. But yeah, it answers questions like, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I still haven't talked about in-text citations, but what do you do if there's no author? Just use the first 3 letters of the article title, put in quotation marks. What if there's no date? Use the abbreviation ND. And the same applies to the references page. There are some good examples of how quotations can be incorporated into your own writing. So if you take the time to go through this presentation, I know that reading about APA is not the most fascinating thing in the world, but I'm telling you, if you just take those 30 to 45 minutes and go through this, it will be crystal clear. Like if you thought my presentation was useful, you combine what I just went over with this PowerPoint, and you'll be good, okay? Let me get to the references page. Okay, yeah, so you have some references page examples. And again, it covers what do you do if there's no author? Well, then we begin with the article title itself. We just skip the author part. What if there's no date? We use the expression ND, which stands for no date, okay? So I'm going to close this presentation, but just understand that you have it available to you. Oh, and your McGraw-Hill readings also cover this. So you have APA information in 3 different locations, okay? So please take advantage of that. Let's talk about in-text citations. Basically, this refers to when you're writing your paper, okay? So we're not talking about the very end on the references page. We're talking about the actual text of your essay. Anytime you use a quotation, fact, or information that comes from outside research, it must be cited. And there are a couple ways to handle this. And this sometimes confuses students because you basically have an either-or choice to make when you cite information. The first option is to find a way in your actual sentence to mention the author's name and the year of publication. Okay? So you find a way to say something like, according to Smith, 2008, and you put the year in parentheses, and then you deliver your quotation. Okay, I've just put the words insert quotations, so you'll have to imagine that there's a quotation here. Once the quotation is finished, in parentheses, we put a page or a paragraph number. Now, why do I say page or paragraph number? Anything you find through the Full Sail Library database is probably going to have a page number. If it comes from a journal, there's a page number. But remember that article we looked at, Why Does Sexism Persist in the Video Game Industry? That from that website, right, bbc.com. Lots of times those articles don't have page numbers. They're either a single page article where you keep scrolling down to read it, or you might have to click on a second page, but they're not sort of traditional pages like you might think they are. In those cases, we put a paragraph number, okay? Because I need to be able to locate where your quotation comes from. So if I have a page number for a traditional journal article or a paragraph number for like a website, then I can find that quotation quickly. Oops. Go back. Bear with me. Okay, so yeah, one way to handle it is you put the author's name and your publication in your actual sentence. Another solution is just to save everything until the end. So you find your own way to write your sentence, like a recent study states, quote, and then you insert your quotation. And then at the very end, you do 3 things: author's last name, comma, year of publication, comma, page or paragraph number, okay? So again, that's what kind of confuses students, is that you always have 2 options for how you want to cite it. You can break it up and have author name, year appear early on and save the final part to the end, or you can just put everything at the end. The same exact rules apply to cited information. Again, just because you're not directly quoting something doesn't mean you don't have to cite it. Anytime information appears that comes from research, you need to cite it. So, but the same rules apply. So, according to Smith, 2008, American students are underperforming in comparison to their world peers. So let's imagine that this is entirely my own language. Okay, there's no similarity to the original source material. Yet this statement comes from research. Okay, I'm citing it. And same thing, you can find a way to incorporate author's name and publication in your actual sentence, or just write the sentence and save the entire citation information, author's last name, year, page or paragraph number until the end. Because this might sound confusing, let's look at an example. I am such an ambitious instructor that I went ahead and wrote a second introduction last week. Remember, I wrote an introduction about video games. I used Tomb Raider as the example. I chose an entirely new topic and wrote another introduction. So if you thought it was difficult to write an introduction posted to the discussion board, I've written 2 of them. In this case, I'm pretending to be a music student, and my chosen topic is royalty rates that streaming music companies pay out. So I'm not going to read this entire thing. If you really want to, you can read it on your own. But notice how it starts out. In 2011, pop star Lady Gaga was paid $167 for 1 million plays of her 2008 hit Poker Face via Spotify. Because this comes from research, right? I cite it. I had to look up the numbers to find out that she was paid only $167 for 1 million plays, which is terrible because A, that's very little money for that many streams of a song. Second, Poker Face is like the greatest song ever. So just because it's such an awesome song, it deserves to be paid. Lady Gaga deserves to be paid millions of dollars. Insulting, highly insulting. Okay, but let me get back on track. Yeah, okay, but see the citation. I'm not quoting anything, but I got these facts from doing research. I have no idea. I had no idea before I wrote these words that this is what she was paid. So I cite this information. Okay. Yes, I could have found a way to say, according to Jefferson, 2011, pop star Lady Gaga was paid, blah, blah, blah. But because I'm imagining this as my introduction paragraph, that's an incredibly awkward way to begin an essay, according to Jefferson. Like, who's Jefferson? Why are you mentioning Jefferson? So one of the things that you'll notice is that when you have this either or choice, okay, let me go back to the previous slide, right? You can put author's name, year of publication early in the sentence, or you can save everything to the end. Intuitively, you'll kind of figure out which one is better. Like, is it that important for you to mention the author's name in the sentence and give credit? Maybe it is. Or maybe it feels natural to do that. But maybe not. And if not, just save everything for the end. Real quickly, some final tips. And this first point here might be involved in a quiz question. Things to be careful of. First of all, do not photobomb your quotations, facts, or statistics. What do I mean by that? We all know what photobombing is, right? That's social media term to describe when someone interferes with a photo that's being taken, either on purpose or accidentally. That's what it feels like when a quotation or a piece of cited information comes out of nowhere. So you're reading along, and it's like, okay, good, and then boom, a quotation appears. Or some other piece of information. We always need to set up that information. And a good trick to remember is the sandwich technique. We call it a sandwich because we set up the quotation. That's like one piece of bread. We deliver the quotation. That's like the meat. And we follow up the quotation with commentary. That's like the other piece of bread. Second, avoid long quotations that speak entirely for you. Remember, occasional research is being used to help support your points, not the other way around. Okay. Sometimes students find a very, very long passage and think, wow, this author expresses things better than I ever could. And then they just take the huge chunk and put it in their paper. The problem is that means if I take out all that information, there's very little of your actual language that remains, right? There's very little of your voice that's being heard. So yeah, be careful of that. We're selectively using research to support our points. Plus, if the quotation is over 40 words long, it needs to be put in a special format called block format. It's not terribly difficult. If we look at and I closed it, the sample student paper you have as one of your assets, here's an example of block format. Okay, right here, right? This quotation is longer than 40 words. So it needed to be put in block format. But notice he's not having this passage speak for him. He already has a pretty long and rich paragraph. And this chunk, yeah, it exists and it's kind of long, but he continues on with the discussion, right? If you want to know how to handle block format, you can look at this example, or that PowerPoint presentation covers how to do it. Okay, real quickly, because believe it or not, we are coming to the end. I sometimes deliver things out of order, so I apologize. We've already discussed the references page. In the past, I would discuss it later in the session. So that's the joke, is I write sorry, because the references page is kind of complicated. So like I said, I don't have all of, I would never be able to have the time to cover every aspect of the references page. That's why I put the sorry. Okay. So yeah, that makes no sense. Some real quick tips about the essay in terms of organization. So you're writing an essay for Sunday. This information is incredibly general, so I apologize for that. But I think it's also useful because if you're kind of lost or confused about how to write an essay, general tips are good. Okay, so hopefully you've done this first step already. Okay, I'm reading through your discussion board activity, but your main task was to write an introduction paragraph. This was designed so that if it was in pretty good shape, you pretty much have the first paragraph of your essay. So anyway, we already talked about this, right? An introduction, it makes some sort of opening move or hook. It briefly defines the issue, and then it has a thesis, which is your PSA message. Um, and then in the rest of the paper, basically, you're going to do two things. First, you're going to further define the issue using separate paragraphs to make separate points. In other words, if you're writing about the royalty rates that music streaming companies pay out, it's pretty important that you discuss the issue, define it, prove to your readers that there's a problem, right? They're not going to act unless you cover the topic with some depth. So, yeah, this is what I talk about when I say further define the issue. Or what are some of the rest of you writing about? Who can give me a reminder of some of your topics? I'm having trouble remembering them off the top of my head. Like I remember Toby pitched something, but I can't remember what his topic was. Can anybody give me a quick refresher so I can use your topic as an example? Aaron says what we see versus Melanie, stereotyping in programming, Tabitha, degradation of women in hip hop, Toby, children playing violent video games, Ridvik, lip syncing. Okay, lots of good examples. So, degradation of women in hip hop. Okay, so Tabitha's going to have to discuss that issue in depth. She can't just make the claim and say this needs to stop, this is terrible, without first proving that the problem exists and is real, using a mixture of her own intelligence and support from research, right? She'll have to spend several paragraphs, 2-3 paragraphs, I'm not sure, discussing the issue. And separate paragraphs typically should be responding to separate points in your essay. So maybe Tabitha has 2 or 3 specific points she wants to make about the issue, and break that down. Same thing with like Toby and violent video games, or Ritvic with lip syncing, right? You'll create the time and space over 2 or 3 paragraphs to really define the issue. Second, make sure you discuss your call to action, right? Which is kind of like your solution or what you want readers to do before your conclusion. So yes, like students are awesome at this part. They're usually pretty good at defining the issue. But then when it comes to explain to readers what they want them to do, they either forget to do it or they're not sure what to say, right? They say, I don't know, Ritvic is working at lip syncing. They say, stop lip syncing. They don't have anything else to say. All of your call to actions should be rich enough that you can create a full paragraph, and not a paragraph of filler. Like, honestly, a paragraph where you comfortably talk about what it is you want your audience to do. And then finally, you'll have some sort of conclusion of some sort, right? You'll bring the essay to a satisfying close. So if you want to take a screenshot of this, go ahead. Like I said, it's pretty general advice, and if you've taken English classes before, you're probably familiar with these kinds of things. But for those of you who are lost, it really is as simple as having an introduction, defining the issue, making sure you discuss your call to action, and then concluding. Okay, I'm actually going a little bit long tonight. Who's ready for quizzes? Quiz questions. Here's number 1. Engaging in research is like participating in a blank. I spent a lot of time at the beginning of the session specifically comparing research to what? I actually think I used the word joining. Research is like joining a fill in the blank. Oh, Toby, you're not supposed to. You don't have to give the answer away in the chat. The good news is people who watch the recording of the session can't see the control panel. They can't see the chat. But yeah, don't show off. And we all know. No, it's fine. Don't worry. Okay, here's quiz question number 2. Dropping in a quotation out of nowhere is similar to what social media, for example, Instagram, annoyance. Okay, this is an easy question. These first 2 questions are incredibly easy, but it's amazing that there are a handful of people who sometimes get question number 2 wrong. Okay, just a couple slides ago, I think I made a unique comparison that when you're reading along and boom, a quotation appears out of nowhere, it's similar to what online social media occurrence? Yeah, Jeffrey, if this is your first time taking the quiz, your classmates already helped you, but basically you have to go to the actual go to quiz activity. Um, that's always a confusion for students because they show up there, don't see any questions at all. But that's because they're contained in the session. Or if you attend the session first, you get these questions and maybe you're confused about where they go. But yeah. Okay, question number 3. It's not a question. It's something you have to do. Um, I want you to find a quality source through the Full Sail Library databases. So you're going to go there. You're going to start searching for an article. Remember, just one source has to come from the library database. Other stuff can come from online because sometimes students do have challenging topics, and it's a struggle to find something decent through the website. But because of, it's a Full Sail requirement that you have to show that you're comfortable using library databases and that you know how to use them. But yeah, then other sources can come from online, but one needs to come from the library. So I want you to start doing that already. So find a quality article through the library. Give me the title, the author, and the name of the publication, and briefly summarize the article's main focus. So you don't have to write a super long paragraph. A couple sentences that give me the gist of what the article is about. Okay, and it should be an article that's on your topic. That seems like common sense, but every so often I get someone who does a search for, I don't know, the war in Afghanistan, or I don't know, something completely off. No. You're looking for something related to your topic. Okay, and are we ready for the final quiz question? Did everybody have a chance to either take a screenshot or jot that down? Here comes question 4. Using that article you just found, okay, for question number 3, give me a complete end of the paper reference for that article. Okay, so show me that you know how to do this, that you can create a references page entry following APA. Let me make this clear because, again, sometimes students get confused about this. So let me go to my example. You need to find an article, and create something like this. Not the full references page, just the entry for whatever it is that you found through the library. Okay? Because sometimes I get students who are creating in-text citations, or they go to the end of the article that they found and they copy and paste that author's entire list of references. It's like, no. The quiz question is much simpler than that. Find an article, and once you do, create a reference for it. Okay, so let's see if you can remember all those rules, all that stuff about DOI versus permalink. See if you can remember the rules for capitalization as they apply to article titles. Okay, there's a lot to keep in mind. I know it's a little bit difficult in the FSO platform to mimic things like indentation, so that's not a big deal. Don't worry about that. But get the rest of the stuff right. And questions, preguntas. I know we covered a lot tonight, okay? That's why we had to go a little bit extra. Research, APA, the upcoming essay. Lots of good stuff. So if you have any questions, I'll hang out to answer them. Aaron says, when should we be expecting our grades and the discussions posted? I hope tomorrow. I aim for a 72-hour turnaround time, so that means Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'll try my best. It might extend to Thursday morning because there are 3 classes worth of you. But yeah, I'm going to try to get them back as quickly as possible because you'll need that feedback, many of you, to improve your essays. Melanie says, can I see quiz question 3 again? Yeah. Other questions? For those of you who are comfortable with what we've covered, you are free to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. So thanks so much for attending. We'll do this again next week, but I will hang out here for a little bit and answer questions from the rest of you.